Welcome to the Movies to Watch Before You Die podcast. I'm your host, Dylan, with my co-host,
Gab.
That is you. And we are talking about a movie today. But before we start talking about that movie, which you already know because you've seen the title of this video, but I'm going to leave it in suspense for a second to say who we are and why you're listening to us. I was a former video editor. I went to school for film, and I also love movies. And Gab, what are your bona fides?
Well, as a former actor, I am very well educated on character development, script analysis, and plot devices. So we are your hosts here to pick apart each movie that one of us has declared a movie to watch before you die. Hopefully we will agree on that. And if not, one of us will be humiliated.
Yeah, it'd be really nice if we agreed more, because today is my pick, so I would love to agree. So
Yeah,
we'll see if even I agree with myself. Today, I have picked 1985 forgotten film, The Legend of Billie Jean. And Gab, let's get straight into it. And why don't you tell me, why don't you finish that sip of your drink first? And then why don't you tell me, what is it about? I just bought you some time.
What's this all been about? What am I working toward?
You think you know everything about me, don't you?
I dive at your bottom. I bloody well ought to.
I appreciate that very much. The Legend of Billie Jean is about a teenager and her brother who find themselves in trouble with a local teenager, then in trouble with his father, and then in trouble with the law.
Oh, I actually like the way that you described that, the escalation aspect.
Thank you. I was stressed about that all day.
Were you really?
Really, I was like, the fuck is this about?
I do feel like when we get into like spoiler details, I'm going to be like, trigger warning.
Yeah, for real.
So what does IMDb say that it's about? A Texas teenager cuts her hair short and becomes an outlaw martyr with her brother and friends.
I like how the most important detail is that she cut her hair.
Yes, that's the first thing they put. Like, I get that the iconic image of the movie is her with the short hair, but yeah, kind of weird that that's like a major plot point to them.
Yeah, all right.
Tagline: when you're 17, people think they can do anything to you. Billie Jean is about to prove them wrong.
I like that.
Second tagline: the last thing she ever expected was to become a hero.
I like that too.
Really? I feel like you're tough on taglines, so it's good that you like those.
Yeah. I'm usually not a tagline person, but all right.
Okay. So, should we get into some opinions now that we've talked about what it's about?
Yeah, let's go.
In this critic's opinion,
You know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Well, I have a right to my opinion, and my opinion is you have no right to your opinion.
All right, Gab. I guess I'll start because it's my movie, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can tell you, I can vaguely remember little childhood Dylan having this movie set up by my mom, watching this movie, and I'm going to read to you how my brother described it, because I was like, tell me about when we were showing this movie. And he said,
Yes.
yeah, mom showed it to us and you fucking were obsessed with it. And that song Invincible. I think it's great though. So it had his seal of approval and described how the fervor that I had for it.
Amazing.
I think having rewatched this now at my current age,
30.
Wow, putting me on blast.
Yep.
Watching this now as an old man, I will say,
as you come to the end of your life.
one can only hope. I will say that I think that this movie was, it has flaws, but I also think it's somewhat ahead of its time with the themes of fame, with the themes of, this is such, I definitely didn't realize as a little boy, because I wouldn't have cared about it then, that this is such, I think, a feminist story. And I think it also really talks a lot about working class and capitalism a little bit in there too. So I think that there's really some hefty themes in a movie that is about four actors, doing terrible Southern accents, and a movie that is like cheesy to the core, but also has some really serious moments in it. Like, to give a more in-depth description of what this movie is about, Billie Jean and her brother Banks, are at the very start of the movie picked on by this boy, Hubie Pyatt. Mr. Pyatt. Okay. I just had to get a little Southern accent out there. And you can tell that this is a regular occurrence. Hubie steals Banks's motor scooter, which is clearly the most important thing in the world to this kid. His sister's trying to tell him we'll get it back. Not only do they get the motor scooter back, all busted up. They also beat the crap out of Binks. They do $608 of damage, which, early fact check, I looked up, with inflationary dollars in 2022 money, that would be $1,653 of damage.
Wow.
And these are, poor people. They live in a trailer park. They,
in Corpus Christi, Texas.
They don't have the money to fix it. And so they do the responsible thing. First, they go to the police, which is what you should do.
Yeah.
Because they, I think every time Billie Jean does the morally upstanding thing, and every time the system seems to fuck around, man. The police are like, I'm sure it'll be fine. Then she goes to Mr. Pyatt and tries to get the money back from him. And he seems like he's going to be a nice guy and give her the money. And it turns out he's the slimiest, skeeziest, scummiest motherfucker on the planet who offers her $50 and then says each time she comes back, she'll get a little more and she'll earn as she learns, as he starts putting his hands all over her in an attempted sexual assault. That was what the trigger warning was for before. Probably should have given it again before I said that. My bad. And then, she runs away from him. Binks has already tried taking the money out of the register and finds the gun in the register instead. Mr. Pyatt advances towards him, bluffing that the gun's unloaded, and they shoot Mr. Pyatt in the shoulder. Mr. Pyatt, each time is trying to say who's going to believe them, all of this, and it just escalates more into they become, and I think I told you off camera at one point that it's heavy with the symbolism to the fact that Billie Jean is like a mix of Joan of Arc with like their, the Billy the Kid gang a little bit too, with the way that the media creates this firestorm around them.
Yeah.
I feel like, though, I filibustered enough, Gab. Maybe I should let you talk about this a little bit before I just give a full diatribe and it's just me talking.
Yeah. So after they shoot him, they realize they need to basically like get out of town because they're going to be in trouble, because he's right. Nobody's going to believe them over him. So they wind up basically like running away, getting themselves into some more trouble. I think they like don't have any money and they go to a store and they leave an IOU and they're basically just like trying to survive. And every time they do something that they're trying to do the right thing, they don't want to rob stores, right? They're not like whatever. They've got I think they rob a toy store and they get a fake gun.
Billie Jean specifically is doing the right thing every time. Like they take walkie-talkies from the toy store and she leaves the IOU. Which an IOU is actually like a legal thing. I didn't know that. Obviously both parties should agree to it, but I literally looked it up. An IOU, a phonetic acronym of the words IOU, is a document that acknowledges the existence of a debt that will be repaid. An IOU is often viewed as an informal written agreement rather than a legally binding contract. Now, the people around her are young kids who sometimes do other things, like Binks, her brother, does just steal a toy gun at one point.
Yeah. No, that's okay. It's helpful to get the more definite details. But essentially every time they are, the police are looking for them, it's on the local news, and every time they leave their mark somewhere, the media follows them and interviews the owner of the store or what have you. And every time the story is sort of like becomes more and more outlandish and like further from the truth and depicts them in this bad light, and they're kind of like making their own situation worse. And at some point they wind up in like a rich man's mansion and they meet his son, and the son helps her to make basically like I don't want to say like a hostage film, but like a film basically saying like, this is my side of the story.
Yeah, it's her response because, basically what you have is, and like I said, this is, sort of whatever the closest that they could have preempted or pre-thought of going viral. Because literally it's just at one point, the police are talking about supposedly, she burned down a school over here while she was robbing a gas station over here. And like the police even say, they were, the people reporting these things, they practically happened at the exact same time. That's why they just have to throw it all out, because it's all just, to use the term, fake news at that point.
Yeah.
And it just becomes this air of they're this gang and they've been doing these horrible things. And it's sort of the media and the system that is painting them that way. And it sort of becomes, old versus youth in that sense too, of like, who's going to believe these kids, these punks?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So I guess before they make this movie, there's something on TV playing, and it's a movie version of Joan of Arc. And Joan of Arc, obviously, the background there is that Joan of Arc pretended to be a man and led the French soldiers against the English and helped them to win. And obviously later it's found out that she's a woman, and I think maybe she like renounces God or something. But anyway, they
She was
burned her
burned
at
at
the
the stake for heresy.
Right. So Billie Jean is very inspired by this and cuts all of her hair off. And it's this iconic moment where she goes from having this long, beautiful hair to having like basically like a what's the word I'm looking for?
Oh, I don't know.
It's like a pixie cut. And she puts out that tape and it just blows up and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And they're running at some point the entire town of Corpus Christi, all these teenagers are obsessed with her. They have Billie Jean hats, Billie Jean shirts, Billie Jean whatever. And at one point she like saves a kid from being abused by his parent because she's got this whole gang of teenagers and right, like
she's got this reputation that precedes her of they're these criminals, they're this gang, and you know, so these kids come up to her and they say Kenny needs help, which honestly it's like, I don't know if this needs to be in the movie, but I guess it speaks to, you know, obviously the legend that has grown out of, you know, this incident that had occurred.
Yeah.
And, you know, she gets there and at first the guy, you know, doesn't believe that it's Billie Jean. And when she walks a little bit closer, he's like, oh my God, you are her, you know, and he sees in the window that there's like 100 kids outside trying to see like what's going to happen. And he's intimidated by her.
Yeah.
Which very much turns the tables of her, you know, having to be a pushover to these men. And, you know, she's, you know, when Hubie is being a jerk in the very beginning of the movie, she's, you know, sort of willing to deal with him on his terms because she doesn't want to have a scene started or anything like that. And, you know, she tells Binks, we'll get the bike back. She tells Mr. Pyatt, you know, she's just going to leave and not say anything at one point because she doesn't, you know, she doesn't want Mr. Pyatt to go any further, obviously. And, you know, it's, I think one of the moments where she realizes how much agency she does have and how much, you know, power has come into her image, even though that's not what she set out to do. But it, you know, you were talking about the fact that they're selling shirts and hats and frisbees and posters. And, you know, we see all these people who are fans and supporting Billie Jean. And how are they supporting her? They're buying those things. Who's selling the things? Mr.
Pyatt. Right.
Which I think is, you know, such an interesting thing that's not really like a huge part of the movie, but I think it says a lot that you think you're supporting Billie Jean, but you're giving money to the man who started all of this.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah, and there's also a shock jock who is talking throughout the entire movie because I guess, again, 1985, this is the closest they have to social media, the internet discussion, is you have this shock jock who's talking. I think he's on the radio 24/7. I think that's how his job works. I feel bad for him. I don't know when he sleeps. But basically throughout the movie, he keeps coming in. And at first, the very beginning, there's a caller who says that they should be arrested. They need to be thrown in jail. And the shock jock like totally agrees with it. And as the movie goes on, you get more kids calling in. And eventually he's, you know, he's willing to present her with a new scooter. If she'll come to the radio station, they're willing to offer her more money. You know, she just grows into this, obviously, I feel so stupid, keep saying it, legendary character.
Yeah. I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, it was a very quintessential 80s movie. It was very cheesy. It was Christian Slater who played Binks and his actual sister, Helen Slater.
People always seem to think that because they have the same last name, but they are not related.
Interesting. Okay. Helen Slater playing Billie Jean. You have the woman who voices Lisa Simpson as
Yeardley Smith. Yes.
Yeardley Smith as what the hell was her name? Putter. Which just lets you know how bad these fake Southern accents were.
Which I had read somewhere that the director was like, no, you got to do the fake Southern accent. Because at first they were like, let's just talk in our natural voices. You know what I mean?
That would have probably been a little less distracting. Literally the first note I have is these fake accents are killing me. And I mean, that was at least 3 minutes in. And then one thing that really made me laugh, I'm just going to get into my notes now. It's very hot where they are. They're complaining about the heat, Corpus Christi, you know, whatever. And Binks wants to hear about Vermont. He's like dreaming of going to Vermont and seeing snow and whatever. And at one point they're laying on this like wood raft kind of thing in the middle of a lake to try to cool down. And he goes, tell me about Vermont again. And it literally made me think of Tell me about the rabbits, George.
I was gonna say that. It does. I was like, oh my god, it's a little Lenny and George.
So Lenny and George, it really made me laugh.
Also, Binks was a Bernie bro before it was cool. Binks is like
what?
Vermont, Bernie Sanders bro.
Oh yeah.
Vermont's where it's
Yeah.
at.
Vermont's the way to go. It felt a little incesty in the beginning.
I've heard people say that, and I never noticed it before.
Did you notice it this time?
Not really, because I did read though that Christian Slater had, because of them having the same last name, which I should be saving some of this for the facts because I have so few facts about this movie.
That's all right.
Because nobody seems to give a shit about it but me. But Christian Slater, because they had the same last name, thought they were like fated to be married. He thought it was like destiny, and he had such a crush on her apparently.
Aw, that's cute. Then I wrote, men are so disgusting and vile, and I hate them.
Yeah, I have that here too. Almost word for word.
Amazing. Then also this is at this point, this is stupid. The police sergeant is the father from A Walk to Remember.
Peter Coyote, great actor, great narrating voice.
Yes. I recognized him immediately, and I was like, I know him from somewhere. And then I realized that was where I knew him from. I used to love that movie. Have you seen it?
I have not. I
It's
also know
bad.
him from, and I feel like again I was going to get to this, but he's in E.T. and he is in the Hebrew Hammer. Have you ever seen the Hebrew Hammer?
I thought the Hebrew Hammer was something Zach made up.
No,
I thought
no,
Zach made
it's a
that
real
up.
movie.
Oh shit.
Honestly, next Christmas I'm going to do the Hebrew Hammer. It's one of my
Okay.
picks.
That's amazing. Then I wrote, I miss what malls used to look like. At one point they're running through the mall, and I was like, damn, I miss an old-fashioned 80s, 90s mall.
Yeah, the mall right near us, the mall of our childhood, the Sunrise Mall, has just been
Dead.
gutted. It's done.
R.I.P. Do they still skateboard through it?
I have no idea. It'd be much easier to now since there's no more people inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember, this is off topic, but speaking of the Sunrise Mall, I have this weird misplaced memory from my childhood where we were in the Sunrise Mall on these like large elephants. And they're not real elephants. They're not real elephants. But they were like robots that could walk, and you got to sit on it like you were riding a horse, but it was like a fake elephant. Did I make that up?
I mean, I don't remember it. It sounds like it could be a real thing because I know in other malls they have those little things you can ride.
Yeah, but this would walked in circles.
We'll have to ask Zach. He has by far the better memory.
Yeah, well, he's older too, so he'd remember. And then the last thing I wrote was, what a bizarre moment with Putter getting her period.
It's so out of left field. So at one point, a bounty is put on her, which again goes back to the capitalism aspect of this, because being, a working class person, all of a sudden, a lot of people are now turned against her again, even if they did believe in her. So there's a random guy in his pickup truck with his girlfriend, wife, whatever, who sees Billie Jean and pulls out a gun immediately and is like, $10,000 that could like pay for our mortgage, which speaks to the time that this movie came out or something.
Yeah.
But he starts shooting at them, like trying to murder them, because
Well,
I guess
no.
it was wanted dead or alive.
No. He said, I'm just going to aim for the tires, but he had bad aim.
He had terrible aim. He shoots out the back window.
Yeah, he actually has great aim if he was aiming to shoot out both the back and front windshield.
Yes. So eventually, the shooting stops. This guy flips his own car over, but what happens is, they get away from the guy, and she goes, Putter, you've been shot. And she goes, no, I haven't. In that Lisa Simpson, she just sounds like Lisa Simpson.
It's
She
just
can
Lisa
never,
Simpson.
she can't be anything but Lisa Simpson, no matter
It's
how
so
hard she
true.
tries. And she goes, they have this moment of realization where she realizes it's her period. And Putter says, when can I flush my first tampon? No.
Tell me you had that in your back pocket since the moment you saw it happen on screen.
I'm gonna be honest, like halfway through I came up with that. She says something along the lines of like, it's about time, which is like, she probably should be like, oh, my stomach hurts real bad.
Yeah, honestly. And then at one point Billie Jean is like, you can stretch out in the back, and I'm like, bitch, stretch out. I need ibuprofen.
It's so weird that she's like, I've never seen, I've never had a period personally, but I've never seen anybody, unless they were like, I guess late, be happy to get a period. They're like, oh God, great.
Yeah, there's definitely times when you're like, thank God. But it's never the first time. I mean, unless you're, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm the only person who wasn't having sex at 12. But
I feel like we've gone too far in.
we've gone too far. We're in. And then at one point she says, they bring it up again. They bring it up a second time in a different scene. And Putter says to Billie Jean, "When can I get my first diaphragm?"
That's
And I
just
was
like a laugh line, yeah.
yeah, but I was just like, I don't want to keep talking about this, please.
You know what? I think it speaks to the feminist nature of the film, though. That, like, for some reason, they felt the need to include that in this movie.
I
Because
guess, but
it's so out of left field. But it is like one of those things that, Putter being part of the group with Billie Jean, that she goes along with it.
yeah.
Um,
Yeardley Smith
Mhm.
Looks like she's 30 in that movie, by the way.
She was 20.
Oh my God,
She was 20 playing 14.
Jesus Christ. Well, she did not look 14.
Well, you got to keep in mind that in the 80s, every 80s movie that has teenagers, they're all like 30. You know
That's
what I mean?
true, yeah.
I think of what was the show in the 90s? It's not Beverly Hills 90210. It's either that or Melrose Place, where it's like, Luke Perry, rest in peace. I think he was like 40 playing like a 17-year-old or something.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
But I also think, again, in Billie Jean, being morally upstanding immediately after the shootout and after the period, both very dangerous moments.
Very bloody moments.
Yes. You'll be surprised which one leads to more blood. But immediately after that, she decides that she's going to, not let her friends keep going along with this. And she turns just them in.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, as from a friend standpoint, it's messed up. But from a standpoint of what's the right thing to do, I feel like Billie Jean every single time does the right thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Oh, wait, I should look at some of my notes to see if I had anything in particular here.
Yeah, please.
Because he's a fucker. That's how I know.
Oh.
Just love that line.
Oh my God. So I always put on the closed captions whenever I watch a movie for the podcast, because if there's
okay.
a quote, like, I just want to make sure that I really understand what's going on. And for whatever reason, so number one, I'm going to save that for later. For whatever reason, the captions were like edited. So I heard her say, "'Cause he's a fucker." That's how I know. But the captions say, "'Cause he's a sucker." And like, there are so many times where like they'll say like, "God damn it," and it'll just come up as like, "Darn it." It's crazy.
Have you ever heard, there are some very classic versions of like when they actually do that, the editing for like TV. Have you ever heard like the one for Scarface?
No.
So the actual line is, the cop says, "How'd you get that scar? Eating pussy?" And Al Pacino goes, "How could I get a scar like this eating pussy, man?" In the edited version, he goes, "How'd you get that scar? Eating pineapple? Man, how I get a scar like this eating pineapple?"
That's hilarious.
I love it so much. The only other one that comes to my mind is, I think it's in Final Destination 2, a character says, "Jesus Christ," and they just changed it to Judas Priest, which we all shout out, of course, when we're scared.
Right, naturally. Oh, funny.
I really like Peter Coyote, the moment that he gets to Mr. Pyatt's shop, which I think his name is Lieutenant Ringwald, but it doesn't matter. He gets to the shop and he sees the girl, the poster of Billie Jean, and he immediately says, "I think I blew this one." Because like this all could have been stopped if the cop had taken this more seriously than like, boys will be boys. It's not a big deal. I'm sure I'll give the scooter back, which is totally what he does at first.
Yeah.
You won't pay her, but you'll sell her picture, I think is another really good line, because Mr. Pyatt ends up making a killing from this, because at the end of the movie, big spoilers, she finally gets back to confronting Mr. Pyatt again. And Mr. Pyatt has made so much money, obviously, from this by this point, that he just gives her a stack of cash and he's like, "A little more, a little less, don't worry about it." And she goes, I think she says something like, now you give me the money.
Yep.
You know what I mean? After they've been through so much by this point, ridiculousness. And I just, again, I think that there is more depth there than this movie should have for what seems like on its face a ridiculous movie about like teenage rebellion.
Yeah.
I think Lloyd's house rules. I just think, Lloyd has like all these spooky masks. Lloyd's a character that I'm like, I don't know if he's needed at all in this movie.
Yeah, it was nice to have a love interest.
Yeah.
I did love the slide from his bedroom window into the pool.
That was cool. Lloyd's
That
house
was really
rocks.
cool. Yeah.
I really do like the actor Keith Gordon, and I'll talk about other stuff he's been in when we get to facts. But yeah, Lloyd, he's kind of like, considering how much this movie is about her having agency and her making the choices, part of me, kept worrying, like, does he take away from that at all? And I do think the fact of the matter is no, because she does feel, she has several moments around him when she's able to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of think that she's like, I feel like it's going to sound stupid, but she is a very powerful female character. Like I'm surprised. Like I think if this movie were more well known or more of a cult classic, which I think it should be, that she would be remembered more as like a younger Ripley or Sarah Connor type character, because she is tough through it all type thing, while also having the private vulnerability.
Yeah, I agree.
Her response video, I wrote, again, this is ahead of its time. They make a video and send copies to news stations. Nowadays, she'd just be on IG Live or TikTok or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought about that too. But it's true. And I'd love to see a remake of this now.
I don't know if you could remake this now, because I think it'd be, I think it's more commonplace now. I think that like it sort of actually happens now all the time, that there are these fads and things that go viral and like we forget about them after a month. You know what I mean? Because that's really what happens by the end of this, that it's like the fad burns out and we all move on.
Yeah, true.
I'm your guarantee. Like when you buy a car, that's a warranty.
So stupid.
We didn't start this. We didn't mean for it to happen, but we're not giving up until you pay. Fair is fair.
Yeah, I was thinking about that all day. Fair is fair.
I still say fair is fair frequently. Like I think of that line all the time. And I will say that me and my brother will say, and each time you come back, you'll get a little more. And each time we're disgusted by each other whenever we say that for any reason.
It is really funny though.
It's so gross, but it's like out of context, it makes it so much funnier.
Yeah.
I do love the kid at the news station doing the fair's fair. She holds up her arms like almost in like a bicep flex when she says it, and this little kid just holds his arms straight up, and it's quite frankly adorable.
It is cute. That was cute.
Wow, men are really gross in this movie with this nasty abusive father along with Mr. Pyatt.
Yeah.
The one change I had with Lloyd is I kind of wish that they share their first kiss, and I was like, the one thing that would make that a little bit better is if Billie Jean kisses him first.
I think she did, no?
I don't think so. I think he goes in for it first. Which I think is okay, because I do think that the very first time that she even comes near him when they first meet, she's taking a step back because he's talking just in like a way that could be slightly construed as coming on to her. And, keep in mind, the last time that happened, a man attempted to sexually assault her. So like she's obviously apprehensive about anything that this guy does. Yeah. So I do like that she does sort of, they ease into each other, I guess. And
but also he was dressed up like a werewolf.
Yes, I guess he's attempting to scare them at first, which I do love his reaction. She rightly smacks him in the testicles, which there should be like a testicle hit counter in this movie, because it's at least like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Which again, another thing that I randomly will say is after Hubie gets hit in the testicles on the escalator, he goes, get her. I will randomly do that at times. Oh, goddamn, the road stops are crazy. And I forgot that she and Binks get separated, because there's an entire like montage of them being separated from each other, where there's like an underground highway of Billie Jean riding with other pixie cut teenagers, and like she's on a motorcycle at one point. And like
we should mention that every girl in Corpus Christi cuts her hair to look like Billie Jean.
They literally show, at the final scene, not the final scene, but at the end on the beach, they're giving haircuts to look like Billie Jean.
Yeah, it's very cool.
It is cool. It's such a movement. Did you love the song Invincible by Pat Benatar?
I did.
I fucking jam out to that so hard.
I love
Giselle, we were in the car. I was like, put on Invincible right now.
Put on Invincible.
I was like, go to my Spotify playlist and put this on.
Oh my God.
I think that's all like the main notes I have. So should we get to some facts?
Yeah, let's fact it up. I regret that. I shouldn't have said that. Okay.
Well, we're keeping it.
All right, great. Great.
Let's fact it up.
I want the truth!
Face the facts, ducks.
Facts have no place with an organized religion.
All right, let's start with the scores, which I think are pretty harsh. IMDb gives this a 6.6 out of 10. Okay. Rotten Tomatoes, it gets a 46% on the tomato meter, with an average rating of 4.9 out of 10, 6 fresh reviews, and 7 rotten. So to be fair, it's a very small sample size.
Yeah.
The audience score, 75%. Average score of 3.9 out of 5. Directed by Matthew Robbins, who only has 8 directing credits, but more recently has worked as a writer with Guillermo del Toro on Crimson Peak and his more recent Pinocchio on Netflix.
Oh. The Pinocchio nobody asked for.
No, this was the good one. The one nobody asked for was the Disney Plus Pinocchio.
I didn't ask for either, if I'm being honest.
Well, there's been 2 Pinocchios this year, and supposedly the Guillermo del Toro one is very good, but I have not watched it.
Okay.
There's a bit more about the director here, but I'm going to skip it. I don't like these facts, Dylan. Go back to what you had, Dylan. All right. Written by Mark Rosenthal and Lawrence Connor, who also wrote The Jewel of the Nile, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, Mona Lisa Smile, The Sopranos, and The Many Saints of Newark.
Interesting.
This stars Helen Slater, who was also in Supergirl, The Secret of My Success, and Ruthless People, which I love the movie Ruthless People. Christian Slater in his first movie role from Mr. Robot, True Romance, and Heathers. Keith Gordon plays Lloyd. He's from Christine and Back to School. Yeardley Smith, who is only Lisa Simpson. That's all she will ever be known as.
Yep.
And as I said, Peter Coyote from Patch Adams, E.T., A Walk to Remember, and The Hebrew Hammer.
Which is real.
Which is real. Critics' consensus? There was none. Rotten Tomatoes didn't even have one. I was like, oh man.
Wow.
There is no information on the budget of the movie.
Damn.
It made $3.1 million domestically. It was released in less than 1,000 theaters, which technically would qualify as an independent film, nowadays.
Yeah.
Let me get to the facts before I get to the reviews, because I got a lot more reviews than facts.
Okay, well, you don't have a lot more time.
I will make time, mother.
Okay.
I was going to curse, but I didn't. I don't know why I stop myself from cursing sometimes, because sometimes we let the expletives fly and other times we don't.
I think my favorite part of this episode is how many times you said the word testicle.
Testicles. Helen Slater has frequently had to tell fans that she and Christian Slater are not related. The misconception has been around for years entirely because they played brother and sister in this movie.
Yep.
In addition, Helen Slater is Jewish, while Christian Slater is not.
Oh, so Helen Slater is more likely related to us.
I suppose.
So that's our second cousin.
Yes, my second cousin, Helen Slater. The original title for the film while they were shooting was Fair is Fair.
Nope.
Janet Smalley, the actress who played Putter's mother, slapped Yeardley Smith for real. Smith's remarks on the DVD commentary was that her face was numb after the scene was shot.
Wow. I hated her just based on how she looked.
The mother?
Yeah.
Just on the look, not on the slapping the child.
Nope. Just on how she looked. Hated her. I hated her before she slapped her.
Very interesting.
Yep.
The theme is by Pat Benatar, Invincible. It made the top 10 on the Billboard charts. Pat Benatar has said at concerts before performing the song that it is from the worst movie ever, which I think is really harsh, man.
Wow, that's so mean.
Right? Okay. Now let's get to some reviews. James Sanford from the Kalamazoo Gazette. Strident. Are you just laughing at the Kalamazoo Gazette?
Yes. We cite the hard-hitting papers here.
There's only 13 reviews, Gab. Strident, borderline campy drama, complete with a raging Pat Benatar theme song. Which, can't really tell if that's good or bad.
I mean, it's just honest.
Yeah. Caffeinated Clint from Movie Hole. A memorable movie with some fine performances.
Okay.
Michael E. Gross from Classic Film and Television. Above average teen melodrama.
Okay.
Felix Vasquez from Cinema Crazed has a straight-faced camp about itself that makes it a blast from the past worth sitting through.
Okay, I'm going to let you give me one more review because then I'm desperate to talk about our verdicts.
Oh no. Paul Atanasio from the Washington Post. The Legend of Billie Jean is partly intended as a satire of the American machine of celebrity, but it's mostly supposed to be taken straight, and much of the fun of the movie lies in trying to tell the two apart. One more, Gab?
Fine, hurry up.
Audrey Fox from Crooked Magazine. It vacillates wildly between excellence and incoherence from moment to moment. It would likely be a cult classic if only anyone remembered that it existed.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to our verdicts.
Let's get to our verdicts.
Do or do not. There is no try.
The guilty will be punished.
Sentence is death.
Gab, you go first.
Well, do we have time for this, or do we need to make time?
If we make time, I'm going to read more reviews.
Do you want to make time?
I'm down to make time.
All right, let's make time. All
We're
right.
making time. Fair is fair, and we got more to say about Billie Jean, so we're not going to the verdicts just yet.
I want the truth.
Face the facts, ducks.
Facts have no place with an organized religion.
Because I felt like I needed to justify this movie more. I looked up so many. I literally spent like a half hour just reading about this movie online.
Well, I don't want all your hard work to go to waste.
All right, here's some notes from the Blu-ray commentary.
Oh, boy.
I went deep for this movie, which honestly, I found a really good website on audio commentaries that I might actually frequent more.
Oh, good.
Yeardley Smith says that she's been approached by people in public who recognize her from this film, and the most commonly quoted line she hears from them is, "When can I get a diaphragm?" Richard Bradford, who played Mr. Pyatt, his first appearance prompted Yeardley Smith to say, "Oh, this guy is so scary. He was just so slimy in this role." They both go on to praise his performance several times.
Nice.
Yeardley Smith still has the stuffed teddy bear her character treasured. I always try to keep one thing from each show I've done.
So she's got that and something from The Simpsons.
Yeah. She's done other things. She's just Lisa Simpson. Come on.
Yeah.
Helen Slater is still surprised that she has more fans approach her referencing this film than any other. Yeardley Smith asked Helen Slater if Keith Gordon was a good kisser, and she said, "I think. I can't remember. Sorry, Keith, if you're watching this." The scene where Putter's mom arrives at... Oh, yes, she says it left her face numb. I said that already.
Yeah.
Yeardley Smith, I remember thinking this film is going to make me a huge star, and I think it was out barely long enough to roll the end credits. Yeardley Smith's most regrettable scene, Putter's first period, leads to some laughs from them both. I personally don't know any girl who was happy to get their period, she says.
Yep.
I guess 14 is old to get your period, so I guess maybe that's why, but it is like, okay.
Yeah, it was very out of place.
Okay. Couple more reviews. I'll try and be brief.
Okay.
BlackNerdProblems.com. I can say that after watching this film again, it's worth the hour and a half. It's a righteous, funny roller coaster, and in today's political climate, its naivete is refreshing, and part of the reason I don't think it could be made today. Feminism has become too much of a cultural and economic commodity to make a film critiquing that very fact. Yes.
Yes, indubitably.
Indubitably. TheFundamentals.com. No one knows why movies work or don't work. Not really. It's all a guessing game. Though if I were to hazard a guess, it would seem because Billie Jean is aimed at teenagers, teenage girls specifically. You could argue that movies aimed at teenage girls have often done well, and you'd be right. But Billie Jean is the odd woman out because it's not about a girl falling in love, discovering the joys of sex, or even finding salvation from the love of a good man. It's a massive middle finger to society and the patriarchy. Lawrence Connor and Mark Rosenthal's script never once have Billie Jean being rescued or even hint that salvation lies in any of the male leads. Soon her fans start cutting their hair like her. They also buy clothes with Billie Jean's name on them from Mr. Pyatt's store. To show their support, I can't say Pyatt without going, Mr. Pyatt, a sly dig at how sometimes showing support through consumerism can inadvertently prop up the very thing we're railing against.
Yeah.
Movieweb.com. So obviously this one was written a couple years ago. You'll see. So vital is this film to both the women and youth empowerment movements. I'm having such a hard time speaking now.
You're so excited.
Yes, that it is nothing short of shameful that has gone unnoticed. Currently, very currently, right now, that's what the article says, Wonder Woman is all the rage at the box office. It is being hailed as the woman's film of the summer, and it is very much about female empowerment. However, 32 summers ago, there was another film. It wasn't just about female empowerment, it was about youth empowerment, and that made it bigger and more broad than today's Wonder Woman. Over time, through home video, it would ultimately find its audience. In many ways, this made it more subversive, more like an underground manifesto. And that film was The Legend of Billie Jean, the first truly great female-driven superhero movie, even if Billie Jean isn't quite what we think of when we hear the term superhero today.
Okay.
For real, the very last one, Gab, I promise.
I'm ready.
CrookedMarquee.com. At its heart, The Legend of Billie Jean is a film about empowerment for women, for young people, for members of the working class. Through her experiences with a veritable mountain of injustices perpetrated against her, Billie Jean speaks for youth who feel disenfranchised. They flock to her like would-be apostles. The film leans into allusions to both Jesus Christ and Joan of Arc in their characterization of Billie Jean, from the way that she suddenly and almost accidentally accumulates a reverent group of followers, to her decision to cut off her long blonde hair after watching part of I believe it's the 1957 film St. Joan. In a particularly unsubtle tribute, there is a scene late in the film where a giant effigy of Billie Jean is set on fire, evoking the burning at the stake. But you can't laugh at me if I correct myself first.
I didn't laugh at all.
Good. But while Billie Jean's motives are undoubtedly honorable, the film also speaks to the inherent hollowness. Oh, Gab, words.
I didn't tell you we should have more time.
I know.
I'm
botching it. I'm botching it, Gab. The hollowness and the sort of instant fame. Her fans mimic her style and echo her rallying cries, but are mostly just swept up in a fad. And even Mr. Pat, her assaulter, who is alleging himself to be the victim in all this, exploits the situation, creating merchandise with her image on it. This element of social commentary on the nature of viral celebrity feels bizarrely prescient, especially when combined with a heroine who blurs the line between fame and infamy. We can only hope that one day audiences will rediscover this film and she'll finally get the justice she deserves. After all, fair is fair.
That was very nice.
I'm done. Verdicts?
Verdicts.
Do or do not. There is no try.
The guilty will be punished. Sentence is death.
All right, Gab.
I want you to go first.
You know, Gab, I think you sometimes say that, like, I convince you more into, like, being on the line, even if you don't think my movie is a movie to watch before you die. And to be honest, immediately after I finished the movie, I was like, I love it still, but it's not a movie to watch before you die.
Yeah.
But I'm like, after everything I just read, I do feel like that this should be a cult classic, and I don't know why it's really not. It is such a forgotten movie.
Yeah.
And I don't think it should be. So I think that if you haven't seen this movie, you should find it and you should watch it. So you know what? God damn it, I think it's a movie to watch before you die.
Okay.
Go for it, Gab.
Interesting that you had originally said no, and then you kind of convinced yourself. Do you think that I mean, all right, before I ask you that question, I'm going to give my verdict and then I'll circle back to the question.
Okay.
So the moment that this movie started and they started using those fake accents, I was like, okay, this is not it.
Yeah.
And then I kind of got into it a little bit. I was like, all right, this is cool. Because it happens quickly. Like immediately I knew where we were and what we were doing. It didn't take a lot of setup time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of like, all right, this is okay. And then it kind of got me again. And I was like, ooh. And then by the end, I was totally sold. I was like, this is so awesome. Like I'm excited about this movie. And then it ended and I thought that wasn't very good. Like it wasn't
I am on a roller coaster right now, guys.
I know, me too. It wasn't good. If I had an opportunity to watch it again, I don't know that I would take it. I don't my line and my like bar ever since Vampire's Kiss is always like if I watch it alone, like am I gonna be like, Corey, you have to watch, like we have to watch this together, because obviously like, you know, we don't get the opportunity to watch every movie together. Sometimes I have to do it at 5 o'clock in the morning. But I don't know that I need to watch it again so that he can experience it, so we can like both live in that world. But I think once was enough. And I feel like as a woman and as somebody who often feels like they're not heard or they're not given their due respect, and I don't mean that in like a I'm disenfranchised like kind of way, but you know, whether it's like at work or you know in a relationship, like when you just feel like you're not being heard or you know whatever, like it spoke to that, and I felt powerful afterward, and I was like, all right, I think this is a movie to watch before you die, but only once and then never again.
Holy shit. This is the softest, like, yes, we're calling it ever. And you know what? I'm adding it to our list in the descriptions.
Yeah.
But, wow.
But I mean, tell me I'm not wrong. Like, tell me I'm wrong. You watched it. You were like, oh, this isn't very good. But like, somehow I like it. Now, but did Giselle watch it with you?
Giselle, I have forced Giselle to watch this in the past.
What does she say?
Giselle calls me like a drug pusher. I force her to watch things so often.
Of course.
Yeah, Giselle's not that into it.
Okay.
I don't know if she's ever given it like again, because she was, under duress when she watched it, because I forced her to. I don't know if it was given the fair shot that maybe you did give it, but yeah, she's not into it. And she was like in the room with me for the first 5 or 10 minutes when I started watching it, and she quickly went off to do other things. She was like,
Yeah. I will say this. I had a technology mishap. So
no.
I was watching it this morning and the remote control for my Roku died. Like I just didn't have a remote control. So I was in a position where I was like, I can't pause this. Like I can't walk away. I can't do anything. I just have to watch this straight through. I had to like put my phone on Do Not Disturb and just watch. And I think maybe that helped.
I'm just imagining you like pissing in a bucket, like, God damn it, I wish I could pause.
Side note, I did find out that Roku has an app for your phone that has a remote control, but the movie was over at that point.
But you never found the remote?
No, I have the remote, but the batteries died. And like, who has batteries?
You don't have batteries? I bought them once at Costco. I've had enough for an entire lifetime. That's the way to do it. I don't have enough room in my apartment to store the pack of batteries I bought from Costco, but I'll never run out of batteries ever.
I think the best part is like I had this moment where I was like, well, what else in here can I take batteries out of? And then I realized that was the only thing I had that had batteries. Oh. So I was like, I'm watching this movie now.
I ran out of batteries on a thing recently, and I was like, oh, no problem, I have more. And I ran to the closet and got, D batteries, because I was like, oh my God, we actually had D batteries. Who even has extra D batteries? And I went back and it was C batteries, which look exactly the same. They're both those big circular batteries, but one's slightly smaller. I was like, can I just cram it in there? What the fuck?
They really should have just made batteries like one size. I don't understand why there are levels, but anyway,
we ain't smart enough for that. We needed an electrician for that.
Yeah, my fat face. If you're listening and you know anything, any electricians with your plumbing,
we trust you. You know these things.
You're the person. But yeah, I had to sit down and watch it straight through. Which it's amazing how much more into it you'll get when you don't pause it every 5 minutes to like go make another cup of coffee or answer a text message or whatever. But I appreciated it. I will probably never watch it again. I don't think it's ever really going to come up in my day-to-day the way The Vampire's Kiss still comes up in my day-to-day.
Will you think of Fair is Fair?
Maybe.
I'm gonna make that a thing for you, Gab. Don't you worry. I will randomly say that to you because you are now one of like 4 people I know who has seen this movie.
Good. Yeah, I liked it and I appreciated the soundtrack was great.
Particularly, you got Billy Idol, you got the Divinals, you've got obviously Pat Benatar. I think it's a fabulous soundtrack.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved every song that came on. Not my favorite movie in the world, but I definitely think that it is a movie that more people should watch before they die.
I appreciate it. And you know what? I'm putting it on the list. We agreed on it, even though it's the softest agreement of all time.
Yeah.
It's the most lukewarm agreement of all time.
I can't justify saying no.
I definitely will say there's definitely some childhood nostalgia in there that like couldn't let me not like the movie. You know what I mean?
So your mom loves this movie or it was just a movie she put on?
I'm guessing that she does love the movie because she showed it to me and I know like I'm pretty sure she likes Helen Slater in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could remember better. I just remember well enough to know that like I know if that song Invincible comes on, I'm belting it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think the song in particular like really helped it, but I go wild for I love this movie. I love that song.
Interesting. All right.
It's somewhat unjustified love, but I'm going to put a plea out there. If you're listening to this podcast, watch this movie. Give this movie a shot because I really
it's only
do feel
90
like
minutes.
It is brief and it deserves to be seen. It deserves to have more people have watched it and remember that it ever existed because I feel like it's such an unknown movie that I could barely find anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. I liked it. It definitely made me feel empowered.
Good.
So, yeah.
My other plea, subscribe to our YouTube channel and do all the things on the Spotify and the Google Podcast with the subscriptions and such.
And send us mail.
Send us mail at movies2watchbeforeyoudie@gmail.com or Anchor FM/
movies to watch.
Damn straight. Well done, Gab.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you know what? Share this podcast with 2 people you know, and tell them to share with 2 people they know, and eventually we'll have 8 billion listeners.
I thought
You're
you were going to
welcome.
say shit and something.
No, Gab, I was doing our plea for world domination.
Yes, please. And also, if you've ever taken my cycle bar class, you can. I'm just kidding.
Yes, if you've ever followed Gab on Instagram, you are more than welcome to use this podcast for your commute.
Yes, please. Thank you.
If you don't follow Gab on Instagram, though, you're no longer allowed to listen on your commute. You have to devote time to it. I'm sorry.
At gab.bolin, BOLIN. Everyone.
Just a couple letters away from ballin'.
Basically, yeah.
Testicles. All right.
That's 6. Thank you guys so much for listening. Looking forward to hearing your feedback on this episode. If anybody's ever seen this movie, sometimes we might just get searches. I mean, I listened to another podcast about Vampire's Kiss because I just looked up Vampire's Kiss, so you never know.
Yeah, you know what? If you have any opinions on this movie or any opinions in general, we want to hear them. Comment or send us that mail. Gab, do you have something picked out for next week or no?
I really don't know.
So we will figure that out after this.
Sorry,
but thanks
everyone.
again for listening, and we'll see you next week.
And you know what? Stay yappy. What does that mean?
I haven't hit stop recording, and I'm like, do I leave this in?
You have to.
Or just
You
end
have
on
to.
stay happy.
Scotty Cameron will respond and tell me what it means. So
Scotty and
please leave it
Keen
in.
will surely know what this means. That rhymed. What it means is from the podcast Jump on the Batwagon, which is chronicling the DC animated universe. In a Batman the Animated Series episode, these shows are animated in Japan. There's just a billboard that says Yappy Foods. So people have started saying stay yappy and yappy things and things like that.
Oh, I understand. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's like a little inside joke.
Yeah. Okay. Glad I'm part of that now. All right. Well, stay happy, everyone.
I sincerely believe that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Testicles.
All right.
See you next week.
Fair is fair.
That's what you owe, and we're not turning ourselves in till we get it. Fair is fair. We didn't start this. We didn't mean it to happen, but we're not giving up till you pay. Fair is